Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Thanks for tuning in. You know, I've gotten a lot of questions recently about spinnerbaits. I've done a lot of videos talking about spinnerbaits. It's a bait that, man, that's all I ever used when I was younger. And then I went through a period where I put it away for a while and never used it. And now over the last 3 or 4 years, it is 100% back in my arsenal. And I love the spinnerbait. They catch a ton of fish. They catch big fish. It is a phenomenal bait to utilize pretty much anywhere on the water. You can fish it around open water, you can fish it around grass, you know, wood, docks, whatever. You can pretty much make a spinnerbait work anywhere based on choosing the right blades. And that's what I've gotten a lot of questions about recently is how do you choose the right spinnerbait for certain situations? And that's what I want to talk about today. You know, it seems like pretty standard on the marketplace. You've got the double willow combination like this. It's probably the #1 spinnerbait sold. I'm guessing that's just based on my my perception, but I could be wrong, maybe not. But you know, you've got your double willow blades, you've got your willow Colorado blade combination, you've got your double willow or double Colorado blade. You know, there's lots of different combinations you can get. There's a few other blade choices as well, but just for this purpose of the video, we're going to be talking about the Colorado blade and the willow blade because they are by far the most popular, and the other blades are just kind of combinations of them. So if you understand how the willows work and you understand how the Colorado blades work, it'll give you a good idea as to what some of the other blades like an Indiana blade will do. So what I want to talk about first is just the Colorado blades. So right here, we've got a spinnerbait with 2 Colorado blades. What you need to know about the Colorado blade is that they put out significantly more vibration and thump than you would get out of a willow blade. They disperse more water with their big cup. They push more water, but because they push more water, a couple of things are going to happen. One, they rise much more faster. So when you're reeling it, the bait wants to rise to the surface because the blades are creating so much resistance and it's just pulling the bait to the surface. In some circumstances, you may want that. If you're fishing shallow water, you may want your bait to rise. If you're fishing over grass and you want to keep the bait above the grass, you may want your bait to rise. A lot of times if you're night fishing and the fish are higher up in the water column because the shad that they're feeding on are higher up in the water column, you want a spinnerbait that puts out big thump and stays closer to the surface, which is why most night fishermen throw Colorado blades on their spinnerbaits. The other things you need to realize, though, is based on that blade choice, because you're putting out more thump and you're putting out more vibration, this bait isn't going to be nearly as finessey as a willow blade will be. Because of that, you know, you may want to throw this bait in dirtier water. You know, if you're fishing mud or off-colored water, that's when your Colorado blades will shine because they put out that vibration, which is going to draw the fish to it by using their lateral line versus actually sight feeding on it. You know, I do want to add, though, that when you're throwing a Colorado blade, a lot of times what happens with that is you get less bites, but your quality of bites increases. So if you're looking for a big fish, you're probably better off going with your Colorado blades. So that's the main things you need to know about Colorado blades. They create more drag in the water, they rise your bait, they create more vibration, and they're much more aggressive. The one thing I will add, though, is you can reel these at a much slower pace than you can reel a willow bladed spinnerbait. Because that blade creates so much drag, it keeps it up off the bottom. So you can reel these at a much slower pace than you can your willow leaf blades. So now if we're talking about a willow leaf bladed spinnerbait, what are some of the things we're looking for? Well, because of that narrowness of the blade and the long, slender blade profile, you're going to get less drag, less resistance in the water, which allows you to keep the spinnerbait down deeper. So if you're trying to fish a deep ledge, you're probably better off going with just willow leaf blades. A single willow leaf blade will allow you to get your bait deeper than any other spinnerbait. You know, because of the fact that you can't reel it as slow, you need to keep the reel handle turning to keep these blades going. Because if you reel too slow, the bait will end up dragging on the bottom, which is not ideal, because at that point you're not going to keep the blades going. So if you're fishing in a few feet of water and you really want a slow retrieve, you may not be able to throw a willow leaf blade as successfully as you would a Colorado blade. Now, I will say, if you're fishing clear water, your willow leaf blades are generally going to be a much better choice, because of the fact that you probably do want a quick retrieve because you're trying to create a reaction strike. And at the same time, the fish don't need to feel the bait as much as they're looking to see it, you know, actually visually eat the bait. What, buddy? Okay, we're back. So as I was saying, you know, if you're fishing clear water, a willow leaf bladed spinnerbait's probably a better choice, because the fish don't need to feel the thump. They can still get the vibration from your willow leaf blades, but at the same time, they're visually feeding on it, which makes it a really good clear water bait. You know, this one specifically, if you're a clear water smallmouth fisherman, it's hard to beat a chartreuse and white bladed spinnerbait, or all chartreuse bladed willow leaf spinnerbait specifically, because you want to burn that bait. You want to retrieve it real fast, and you can't retrieve a big Colorado blade as fast as you can a willow leaf bladed spinnerbait. So those are kind of the two main variations, right? So you've got willow leaf and Colorado, but then because you know how each of those blades work, you can then look at some of these other examples of spinnerbaits. So in this case, we've got a willow leaf with a Colorado. Well, you can assume that this is a little bit of a cross. You know, you've got a little bit more lift now out of the small Colorado blade that's on the front. You still got a bigger willow leaf blade. So it's a hybrid. You know, this is a really good all-around spinnerbait, because you can still reel it a little slower if you want. You're still creating a little bit more vibration, but it's still kind of finessey. It's kind of the best of both worlds, which is, you know, why this is a top-selling combination of blades. It just works pretty much everywhere you go. You know, and really for me, you know, what I want to point out is a lot of times when I'm choosing my blades, it has to do with watercolor. Watercolor, and if I'm looking for bites versus size. You know, your double willow leaf blade will get you, in my opinion, more bites than a Colorado blade. But you catch more smaller fish. Your average size fish is going to be smaller than it would be for your bites on a Colorado blade. That just seems like how it is. So if I'm fishing dirty water, I'm going to go with the Colorado blades. If I'm fishing gin clear water, I'm going with willow leaf blades. If I'm fishing water somewhere in between, I'm probably then going with a hybrid that's got a Colorado and a willow leaf. So that's my first choice, is what's my watercolor. The other choice normally will come down to what I'm fishing for. If I'm fishing strictly for bigger fish, I'm going to go with the Colorado blades. If I'm going for bites, then I'm probably going to go with the willow leaf blades. Everything in between there is all acceptable. Like, meaning, you know, there's no necessarily a rule of thumb to just fish Colorado or to just fish willow. It all kind of works, and there's a time and a place for it. But in my opinion, the two biggest factors for choosing it are your watercolor and the size of the fish. And now that you know how each blade will affect your spinnerbait, you can choose accordingly based on the conditions that you have. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video. It's another good one.